at ya, mad at ya. Tell you what's master, coming at ya, coming at ya. Rhyme style disaster, coming at ya, mad at ya. Tell you what's master, coming at ya.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love, alongside my co-host Wilfred Riley. Joining us is Arizona's favorite Black female Republican, Christy Kelly. And our guest this week is Matt Walsh, columnist, author, host of the Matt Walsh Show, star of What is a Woman, certified DEI consultant, and co-star of Am I Racist? Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here, and thank you for those. Those are all my correct titles, so I appreciate.
Except for the co-star, but I had to throw a little star to my co-host here. Yeah,
I'll tell you,
a
lot of people are saying I made the film. I was the only one of those people who didn't seem like a complete idiot. I'll accept it. Yeah.
Was that by design?
Other
We will
than
see.
Yeah.
Well, we want to get into obviously the movie and other interesting things, but I know most people ask about making the movie and the funny people in it. But I want to start with the other part because you're doing something that's really important, and I think we need to highlight that. In that, it is so important to find a way to break through. We complain about the media and getting the information to normal people, and film is a way to do it. I know we had Nick Searcy on, and he said that the only way we can penetrate entertainment is to make our own. So I want to start by asking how hard it was to do. I know, again, Nick talked about how hard it was to do Gosnell and other films. I was happy to see that the film was showing everywhere in places you didn't think it would see, but then no one wanted to review it. So talk a bit about that, about getting it out there and how difficult and challenging that is.
Yeah, and obviously Nick seriously knows quite a bit about more than I do about the challenges of filmmaking. He's been in the business for so long. I could say it's difficult the whole way through, and that starts with like actually making the movie. And this is the second one that we've made, me and my team, that is. And making movies it's hard. It's actually hard to do. It's harder than it looks, in fact. And one of the interesting things about filmmaking that you discover as you get into it is that of all the art forms, it's probably it's more of a team sport than any other art form that springs to mind. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many ways it can go wrong. There's so many things that can get screwed up along the way. And you need so many people to do their job really well in order to end up with a good final product. And if you got a weak link sort of anywhere along the chain from production to post-production and on, it can ruin the product. You could have something that was really good up to that point, and now it's not anymore. So I've kind of developed a lot more respect just for filmmaking itself through this experience. But then once you got the product and you like it and you feel good about it, then there's a whole other challenge of getting it out to the audience. And if you're, if you're not on the left, and if you are especially sort of persona non grata on the left, that challenge becomes exponentially more difficult. And we, have certainly experienced that, getting this movie into theaters. And, there's things again that maybe on the outside you don't think much about. I didn't before we actually went down this path of a theatrical release. But you start things like how many theaters can you even get your movie into? And we got ours into to start with 1,500 screens, which was a lot. I was very grateful for that. But you're competing against movies that have 3,000 screens or 4,000. That's a massive deficit that you have to overcome and you have to compete against. And then you've got these movies that have spending $100 million on marketing or whatever crazy thing it is. So these are all monumental challenges. And I think that these are all reasons why historically conservatives, and there are exceptions, obviously Nick Searcy is one great exception, but for the most part, conservatives have shied away from things like filmmaking because it is so daunting. And when you even start thinking about like what would be required to do this and to get it out there, I think I see that trend starting to improve over recent years, and I'm pretty happy about that.
Well, you and I talk about culture a lot. What do you say about how important this actually is? I mean, I think it's very important, but how important it is to have some kind of competing entertainment out there.
Well, I mean, I think it's extremely important. And I think from kind of a business perspective, I actually think a couple of things about this. One, it's absolutely critical for the right. So and I think Matt would probably agree with this, that there's been a long trend of the right kind of working the refs from the sidelines, like a lot of complaining about entertainment that comes from kind of mainstream liberal pablum producers. This is, Thor Volume 6. This is the one with the first gay kiss in it or whatever. But there's no response. There's not alternative content coming out. I think Daily Wire's done a good job with this, in fact. I mean, I would assume they've just gone on the market and bought products that were being pitched to Mr. Bertram or whatever. They're being pitched to mainstream studios, and where the dollar figure they were being offered was too low or something like that. But the more like good A minus B plus, although I'd give this movie a higher grade than that, content you can put out from the right, the better. I think the right needs to do that. And I think there's a huge market for it. I mean, like Rupert Murdoch famously spoke at one of the business schools when he started Fox, and it was still, old school Fox. And he was asked, well, what inspired you to create this network? And he said, well, 51% of the population didn't have a television network they'd be loyal to. And it seemed like just a very obvious point. I mean, I'm center-right businessman. I'm not even that wild in partisan terms, and I'm probably the typical American or a bit to the left of the typical American. So if you can get content that the average person's not going to gag on out there, that's a good thing. And last point, the problem with this from the right traditionally has been an extreme, and the Daily Wire guys will say this pretty openly, but I mean, it's also been said in business seminars. It's been an extreme overfocus on message. Like Christian rock is all terrible. Because like every song is just
Would
very.
You stop saying that every time you bring it up?
No, but it's all garbage. It's because every song is very explicitly like Jesus, I love you, and like I get it. I'm not a Hindu myself, but it's just if your song is called something like "The Wind in the Sails," and an intelligent person might understand there's a religious reference there, like they're master and commander, but that's not the entire focus. Then you have a chance of marketing your product. So, like, What is a Woman is a movie about trans silliness, but it's also a funny movie. So, yeah, I think there's a space there. And it's good to see players in that space. Hopefully there'll be competition in that space, like multiple conservative brands.
Right. That is key. And Chrissy, we will get to diversity. We can't leave you out. I will get bad. But one more question, Matt. You talked about two ways
People were mad about the female host not getting enough comments.
I did have one quick thing on this, Matt.
I opened the floodgates.
They don't let me talk a lot. I'm just the girl here, but no. How did you get past the Netflix, right? The Netflix dilemma? Because right now, especially with the economy, I'm a middle class mom. I'm huge on like the movies. We're gonna wait till it comes on Netflix. But people were excited to go to this movie to support you, to buy the tickets, to buy the popcorn. How did you kind of bank on that people would be willing to actually go and pay for this in the theaters?
Yeah, that is a problem that the theaters are having. Part of it is the film industry has kind of trained viewers, especially in recent years, that, well, you don't need to go to theaters, just wait a few weeks, it'll be on streaming. And so that's been a big problem that they've been dealing with, beyond anything that we've had to do. So we thought about that. That's one of the challenges, when you decide to put something in theater, you have to worry about that sort of thing. But we also thought that, we thought two things. If we can communicate to the audience that this is actually a film that deserves to be seen in theaters, that it'll like improve the experience to watch it with a group of people because it's funny and it's always just better to laugh with other people. So we thought we could communicate that to the audience, make that clear. And then also, we knew that the audience would be, or we hoped that they would be motivated to come out and support the film. And I always, I hesitated a little bit to use that language to say, well, support the film, because it makes it sound like we want you to do charity work and just give us your money and buy a ticket whether you like the movie or not, which is another problem. That's how conservative entertainment has sort of been sold for a long time, or to support the cause by. And it's like, well, yeah, we do want you to support the cause and support us, and we're grateful for it, but it's also a good, funny movie. And so watch it for that reason, because you'll enjoy it and it's entertaining. And then a byproduct of that really is that you're supporting our efforts to in our own way to take back the culture.
Well, I had a question, but that just made me think of another hurdle you had to clear in that, in this new culture of everybody's partisan and mad about things, and they're quick to boycott whatever side. So you do have an issue where some people may be like, I like, the topic, I like Matt, but his movies being showed in that leftist theater, right? So then some people just might not want to buy a ticket because of, that kind of piece. So that's another thing that you have to think about. So there were a lot of things, obviously, that one would say were playing against you. But what I was going to say is, you said two ways that is difficult: operationally doing it right, the team effort, and producing a good product, and then getting people to go to the movie, getting critics to review it, which they want to do. But this is uniquely different, that it seems that it would create a third difficulty for you, and I want to talk about that, the specifics of the film, in that you're telling a story. It's kind of a documentary, but you're also kind of spoofing the madness that is the DEI thing. And so, unlike where Christopher Guest is all in a vacuum, right? So he makes these wonderful mockumentaries, but it's all part of the game. Everybody's in on it, right? Well, you have to do this and be serious and ask poignant questions to these people and get them to say what they believe and get it to work with what you're trying to do. So talk about how that was difficult, because you got to find the people willing to do it, but also that it's kind of like doing a circus act without a net. You don't know how that's going to play out, and you need to make it good where people who are going to be interested in that topic already know what they're expecting to be in the movie, but you still need to make them laugh, even though they kind of know what's coming.
Yeah, those are. Yeah, I think you described all the plates that we're trying to balance making a movie like this. But I love it. We really, our team. This is kind of the second movie we've made sort of in this style, and it's like putting a puzzle together. It's a very different. I imagine I've never made like a narrative scripted feature. I mean, I'd love to do that in the future, but that's a whole different set of challenges I can imagine. And you have to have a great script. You're working from the script, but at least with something like that, there's a lot that can go wrong on set, I would guess, and you don't know what kind of performances you're going to get all the time. But you do have a script, and so you know what the movie's going to be. At least you'll 100% know that this will be the story because it's written down, and that's it. But with the kind of movies that we're making, it's a film, so there has to be a story, and you want it to follow a basic plot structure to be a legitimate film. But it's also a documentary, it's real. And so we know the message we want to get across, we know the issue we want to explore, we know the kind of basic outline of what we want the story to be, we know the kind of comedy we want to get from it. We know all of that, but we don't really know anything else. We don't know what anyone else is going to say. We know we can kind of plan some things that maybe I'll say or do, but I guess you say scene partners are not read in, and they're not working from a script, and so you don't know how they're going to react or what they're going to do. And so really, a lot of the preparation for especially this last film is before we, let's say Robin DiAngelo, before we shot the interview with Robin DiAngelo, we got the team together. We're sitting at a bar, as we tended to do the day before a shoot. And we kind of are going over, okay, well, this is where we'd like it to go. This is where we want it to lead. But she might say or do this. And if that happens, then here's the direction that I should take that. Here's some things I could do with that. Or she might go that way. And then so you're kind of like, you have door 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in your mind when you go into it. But then very often you go into it and they end up walking through door 5 that we didn't even think about. And so then it's just kind of in the moment reacting to it and hoping that you can, it becomes more of an improv exercise at that point, I suppose.
Right. And you were pretty quick in those cases too. Christy, a lot of people probably, I've seen reviews, not the professional ones because they won't do them, that, yeah, it was funny at times, but, Matt was taking things out of context, or he's twisting people's words and all that stuff, which, I mean, he can do the setup, right? He's just a straight man, right? They had to deliver. But we know that's not true because Will and I have had several, most people, I think we've probably mentioned it before, but the intent originally when Will and I started the pod was to have a leftist on. We couldn't get one to commit. They all say, yeah, we'll come and tell you where you're wrong, and they won't come on, right? But we have had some brave guests to come on. We had a couple anti-racist people who wrote a book called The Anti-Racist Heart. And one of them, my favorite leftist was Fatima Gilliam. You should look her up, Matt. You'll love her. She's a very light-skinned Black woman, thrice degreed, went to all the top schools, upper middle class, but she says she's oppressed. She wrote a book about what the white people, what was it? What your Black friend doesn't tell you. Because she's light-skinned, she says she's passive, so she hears what white people say. And Chrissy was on with her, and she said almost every line in the movie. She actually said, after going back and forth on a lot of issues, I actually asked her, can we at least agree on something that you're personally not oppressed? And she said, no, I am. But what made me think of it is earlier on, I think it was the first woman you interviewed. She says that there's this racism. You asked if it's systemic racism, whatever. No, it was the librarian where you say that white man, I'm on the top, we're on the top, right? So you kind of try to find out what we could do. So Christy, he was trying to find out what he could do. Remember, Fatima said there's really nothing you can do, right? They say do the work, as he mentions in the movie all the time, but they never really say what the work is. They don't know when the work is complete, and they never say who gets to dictate whether you've done the work or not. And so, of course, we just assume that no white person has done the work. So talk about, one, how that reflected in the movie because you saw it, and did it come off as genuine to you, and what you think of all these people who said he kind of set people up.
No, I mean, that was the amazing thing. First of all, I went to the movie with about maybe, 6 or 7 teenage Republicans. So it was a bunch of young people. The entire theater, besides me and my daughter, are all white people. And it was just me and my daughter that were in the theater that were Black. And I wanted to crawl up under the seats at times. I mean, it was just so cringe at times, the stuff that was coming out of, these people's mouths. So they absolutely believe what they're saying. And at the point that they think that they need to apologize for any type of behavior, that was the part that was just most outlandish to me. But everything was spot on. You were not setting people up. This is actually how they think. The thing that was shocking to me that I did not know is how much they charge. So I think a lot of people at the grift and how expensive they're charging for these services, Matt. I think that's what a lot of people will be shocked about.
But was those fees, Matt, was that just their normal fees, or was it that, you wanted them to do a movie or whatever the setup was, and they were charging you that because you wanted something more specific and one-on-one with them?
Yeah, I don't know how much is them taking advantage of the situation. How much is, I mean, this is what we needed to pay them to do, whether it was hosting a workshop or doing an interview.
Right.
That was the cost. We didn't, and I also didn't, it won't shock you to learn, I was not involved at all in the booking side of it. I wasn't the one sending the emails. So I only know sort of vaguely how all that worked. But I do know that I don't think we made a great effort in most cases to haggle the price down.
Right.
Because we knew early on that, well, we're going to put the price tag in the movie. So whatever it is, like, fine, we'll pay it. And that's going to be part of the story. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being, I think, maybe an even bigger part of the story than we initially anticipated. It ended up being, it's one of the things to us putting it in, it was like it's a big part of the story, but it's like, that's just a post, that's just a little edit. You just put the price tag on there, not a lot of effort, but it ends up being one of the main things that people talk to me about when it comes to the film. It's I guess I'm glad we included that detail in there.
I think the thing that the one that got me the most was the mother from the Sesame Street Elmo costume. You remember how much that one was, Christy?
I don't remember how much that one was.
$50K.
Yeah.
I think it might have been the biggest number. That's what I'm saying. I think her thing was like, if you want to get me out there, I think that one, I'm hoping that one was inflated because that was madness. But yeah,
I can tell you that
focused on that.
I can tell you that was not inflated. That's what she wanted.
No,
to
no, no.
talk
I'm
about
sure
her.
it's what you want. I'm saying in the dialogue, I'm thinking she's like, well, they want to put this in a movie, or they want a one-on-one. Let me make this request really high. I'm hoping that everybody who reaches out to her is not giving her 50 grand. But if so, I mean, then that means it's good that her kid didn't get a high. That's over a high five, people, because a costume character didn't high five her daughter. $50,000.
Yeah.
Oh.
Matt, I had one follow-up question. So, as you're sitting there and you're listening to people, I mean, we talk about it on the right a lot. You read the books. Was anything shocking, like as they're talking, were you like, I can't believe this is happening right now?
Most of what the grifter type said was not shocking to me because I did actually read. I read Robin DiAngelo's whole book before
Ooh.
I sat down with her,
Well,
and that was not a fun experience.
mm-mm.
So I know what their whole deal is. In fact, if anything, when it came to the grifter types, what was more shocking to me at first when we started making the movie was how much it took to get them to say what they really think about these topics. They were, in some cases, a little bit more shy at first about some of this than I thought they would be. And that's because they know how crazy it sounds. And they also know how indefensible some of their ideas are. So a perfect example of that you see in the film, the first person that appears in the film we talked to, Kate Slater. And I ask her, is America an inherently racist country? Now, that is what these people think. That is absolutely, they think this country is inherently racist. But when I first asked her that in the interview, you could say she said, well, the word inherently is challenging. She didn't want to come out and just say, yeah, that's what I think. So then she said, well, it's fundamentally racist. It's racist to its bones. And then I said, okay, so inherently. Yeah, inherently. So that's what it took. Now, in that case, it wasn't much. But it's like a couple of beats to, okay, well, to get you to what you really believe. In other cases, like with Robin DiAngelo, in real time, I probably sat down with her for, I want to say 2 hours. It was a long exchange. And the vast majority of that, if you could see like the raw footage of that interview, it'd be incredibly boring because about 90 minutes of it was just me. It's like she wanted to get out all of the HR speak, all of the kind of surface level talking points, all of the safest, most sanitized stuff is what she's doing. And I'm not challenging, and I'm just kind of listening and being a sounding board and showing that this is a safe space and I agree with you. And so you got to go through all of that. It's like that whole routine until you can get to them to the point where, okay, now they'll tell you what they really think. Now we can get down to like the nitty gritty here. But it takes a lot of, it's the same thing as What Is a Woman, actually. It just takes a lot of that before they feel comfortable to, give you the real crazy stuff.
Hopefully Will's coming back. I mean, him and his in Kentucky, man. I tell you, that's probably why you got out of there. But because the internet's so bad. But I gotta end and circle, and I hope people check it out. But talk about my theater experience. I know Christy said hers is unique too, taking a bunch of teenage kids there. But I'm in New York City, so I got to go see the movie in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan. In a theater. I picked a time when you can pre-order the seats, and I picked a time when the theater was mostly full because I wanted to see reactions and things. So people were laughing and all that kind of stuff. I'm watching the movie, and afterwards, it's we're at AMC and they do those little iPads, review the movie. So I did it, but a couple other people stopped. Those things are long. So I zipped through, and you got the entrance and exits on the main level. So I go downstairs because I didn't want to interrupt the other people, but I wanted to stop some people and ask them what they thought of the movie. And so there was two couples. I stopped the first couple, and they were both really interesting. And it leads to the other thing I want to talk about as we talk about why it's so important for us to address the culture, and what I talk about social media. So the first couple I stopped was a gay couple. Black guy and white guy looked, I think he was like Eastern European or something. So I said, hey, I want to ask you briefly about the movie, whatever. And they said, okay, sure. I said, what did you think of it? And black guy said, I thought it was pretty good. And the other one's like, it takes a while. It's a lot to take in. And I said, well, what made you? And he said, I'd never heard of Matt Walsh, and I didn't know much about the movie. I was like, well, what made you go see it? I got an AMC pass. I get to see unlimited movies. They talked about racism. Let's go see it. But they liked the movie. I said, did you think that, people were taken out of context? He said, no. The next couple comes out, it's a black couple. I asked him what made them come see the movie. The woman is like, well, I'm a big fan of Matt. We're on a date and I drug him here. And so they go on for 15 minutes talking about how the left is so crazy, how they're conservatives, and there's plenty of people that think like them in their circle and all this other stuff. So it reinforced two things for me. One is that normal people don't talk like the people that we see on the news and all the elites. And that's why what you're doing is so important, because we need to get to them whether people agree with you or not. And the other thing is, that's why, come on back, Will, is I always talk about social media and Twitter. I'm like, Will and I get into these conversations. He's got a decent following, and I use it. But whenever this comes, he does these polls and things of that nature. And I'll say, well, Twitter's not really real. And what I mean by that, of course, it's real, but it's skewed. The people who are very active tend to be media, tend to be journalists, tend to be elite. Nobody in my family or circle is really on. They got an account, they're not watching it. And so the movies are so important, perfect time for Will to come back, because we have to penetrate what people watch, sports, entertainment, and things of that nature. Because I talk about how you go around and you could, that, who was it? Was it Jimmy Kimmel or somebody, Jimmy Fallon, that used to do the thing where you show a picture of somebody, a celebrity, and say, who is this, a politician, and people would know. People are going to start knowing who you are because of movies. But that first guy said he didn't know who you were. I asked people, they don't know anything. I have a friend who worked in education for years. And I was talking about Kendi something. I mentioned Kendi. He's like, what are you talking about? And I break down the whole thing about Ibram Kendi. He's like, I have no idea who that is. Nicole Hannah-Jones, black guy, educator, didn't know. So we need this stuff because these Uber drivers and restaurant managers and school bus drivers and regular people don't see what is going on. So that's what I got from the interactions of the people there, that, they're just regular people who, the one guy just decided to see a movie because it was there. But this is so important because otherwise we never get to them. I mean, we go to these rallies and we go to GOP events and we like, oh yeah, we saw 1,000 people who think like us, but we never penetrate all of the people who are going to make a difference culturally. So, I think that's what I got from my experience in seeing the movie, and watching Will try not to laugh. That was always good too.
Yeah, well, what you're hitting on there, I think, is very true, and it's something that I think conservative media needs to think more about, and maybe has been in a bit of denial about, which is just that we are in a bit of a bubble, and especially when you're someone, if you have a platform and you have an audience, it doesn't feel like you're in a bubble, because you could put something out and millions of people are interacting with it. You can look at it, I got millions of followers. It's that's a lot of people. It doesn't feel like it's a pretty big bubble. But then when you step outside of that and you go into a place like a movie theater, you really realize that, wow, okay. I mean, it might be kind of a big bubble because there's a lot of people in it, but in the grand scheme of the culture, it's pretty narrow. I methink even on YouTube, and we talk about this. I talk about this people on my team all the time. That I'm up to. I think I just crossed 3 million subscribers on YouTube, so we're happy about that, and it feels like a lot. But then you look at, okay, and that's all. That's pretty good. But you've got channels on YouTube where they just do reaction videos or whatever, and it's like 50 million subscribers. Mr. Beast, 100+ million subscribers. I mean, just absolutely, you feel good with your little 3 million. They dwarf you. They make you like you're nothing compared to that in terms of the audience. And that just shows you that, yeah, conservative, political, or even liberal, but political commentary, that area, it is a relative, comparatively narrow lane that you're in. Mm-hmm. And as long as you stay only in that lane, you're only reaching the people who are in it, who are already interested in this kind of stuff. And many of them are already converted. And you got to talk to those people. And it's important to talk to those people and kind of rally the troops. I think that is important. But you got to break out of that bubble, break out of that lane. And you discover there's a much wider world out there. And that's part of the goal here with putting the movies in theaters.
Well, and the other thing is, you say you have 3 million subscribers, but then what happens is, because the things move so fast, you got 3 million subscribers, but if you go look at the videos you post and things like that, they get a very good amount of views, right? But they get, 700,000, 600,000. So it's hard to even get all your subscribers. People could be paying to see your content, and they may not even be viewing your content. And we obviously you could tell where we left off talking about. The other thing is he talked about people being in these silos of these bubbles, but the biggest bubble, I call it the darkness bubble. It's it's all of those people who are watching nothing except for maybe a reaction video or the old school people on Facebook looking at their friends from high school. So that number dwarfs every number. That dwarfs Taylor Swift, right? So it's hard to find those people, right? We talked before about bowling alone and how there's no unified place where people are going. Well, but we were talking about how that's a problem and how we penetrate that. So you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, so first of all, like I agree that the percentage of people that are involved in like Twitter or TikTok level political conversation is really, really small. So I'm not at like Matt's level on this, but I have like 120,000 Twitter followers and probably like close to 400,000 across all social media. Like I used to own a Facebook company, so on. But I mean, like I went on Facebook the other day and I asked how many people were on Twitter, and it was like 1 in 20. So like all of the people that follow like any of us are drawn from the 1 in 20 like socially awkward gifted kids that are on Twitter in the first place. I mean, and that's important to keep in mind. Like when I talk to my buddies from back home, like guys used to run track or whatever, play basketball. Oh, that wasn't mainly my thing, but for Aurora East, it's like, nah, dog, I'm managing a supermarket. I don't have time for that kind of crap. And I think that's the average person. I mean, you have a job as a high Iron Man for the phone company or something. Now, the question is, does it matter what we do in this discursive space with this few people? Like there, I actually think, yeah, it does. Like if Gad Sad wins a debate with Nicole Hannah Jones or something, and like that 5% of people who care, intelligence is an annoying word, but see it, then yeah, that's like a point for the right. I mean, it absolutely does. Because who controls that narrative, like whether the Wall Street Journal has more circulation than the New York Times or whatever, eventually trickles down to everybody. So, like, most people yet haven't heard the crazy left-wing definitions of genocide or even something like sexual assault from the latest generation. But if that's not stopped on, the platform where it is now, I think people will in 20 years. Transgenderism was something very marginal when I was in the rave scene. Like, there were people then that said, I think I was born as a lady. And everyone's just like, okay, bro, whatever. But that theory became gender studies, and now everyone has to deal with it. So I think the conversation matters. But yeah, most people don't buy it, and most people don't buy the trans thing now. Like you in an average working class white or black community, like I think the reaction would be not abusive, but pretty much the same as it would have been in 1994, honestly. So a closing statement, like the old word pagan means hick, like paisan, it means countryman. Like you might believe in Jesus or whatever, but like you have a lot of old earthy religious traditions because you live 50 miles outside of Rome. Like you're not following every current fashion that goes on. But what we remember about history is the people who lived in Rome. So they're the two things. Like one, most people don't care, but also two, like culture is determined by the people that do. So you need some foot in that camp if you care. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at like the woke Avengers all day.
Right. 100%. I'd like, if we can, Matt, to spend the last couple minutes to talk about, since we're talking about the reach and the impact you have, your, I don't know, what do they call it? Your persona, your social media, and how you talk about issues of the day and the culture on your show and everything, and how people take it. Because I see it kind of ancillary. Like I said, I'm not as active, but I see it, and it's funny to me both because they call them controversial takes. I'm like, it's just people's opinion. I don't know if it's all that drastic, right? And kind of get hear from you a little bit on some of them, because and then I'll probably end up defend. I know at least one I want to kind of challenge and one I want to defend, but the one that I've been seeing around the most recently is the sick day comment. And so I ran restaurants for 20 years. So I saw it and I laughed out loud. Made total sense to me. I didn't even understand what people. You know what? I used to hate when people call out, things happen. That's not an issue. And you can talk about what you meant by it. But what I used to hate is like, I'm a grown man with adult employees calling me like they're in school, like just like you said, giving me a 20-minute drawn out story about why they're not. Dude, I'm running a restaurant and we're on an hour wait. I don't just tell me you're not coming. I don't need to see what happened was I thought the tire was going to change, but when I changed it, the spare was flat. So I called my car. I don't want to hear that nonsense. Just tell me you're not coming. So it's not like I'm assuming, I can't speak for you. You're here. I didn't take it as you saying everything, and social media, only a certain amount of characters. I didn't take it as you saying never take off work. But what did you mean by, adults shouldn't be taking sick days or what have you?
So this is something that happens with me a lot on Twitter. People on the site have certainly noticed this. That and now it's starting to feel like a weekly occurrence, at least a bi-monthly occurrence, where I'll say something either on Twitter or on my show, and if it's on my show, then it's usually Media Matters that clips it. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes this whole outrage cycle for like 3 or 4 days, for way longer than it should be. And usually what happens is it's people pretending that they don't understand the basic concept of comedic hyperbole,
right? Which
is I'm like a normal person. Actually, I'm just a guy, and so I actually speak like normal people do, and so like in your daily life, this is what it's like you're being funny, but you're obviously exaggerating your point, as humans do in conversation. And so I do the same thing on my show because I'm just I'm not presenting talking points. I'm just kind of talking like I am now. Mm-hmm. So I'll say something like, you should be calling out of work at all. Adults don't call out of work. Am I saying that literally no one should ever, like, if you're dying of you're in death throes with pneumonia and you have bronchitis and everything and yellow fever, and you should drag yourself into work and as a waiter at Red Robin and start serving hamburger and coughing? No, of course not. Of course, I'm not saying that. That's obviously not. That would be an insane thing to say. And I'm not literally psychotic. It is just it's an exaggeration. But often, as people do when they exaggerate, there's a core of a point that I actually believe, which is that, like, generally speaking, you should get to work, and even if you feel a little down, you should still go. I understand I'm more of an old school guy when it comes to these things. And so I just go to work. And it's also funny on that because people they've dug up proof that, well, I don't live by that because
you took a day off.
I took a day off. And even though in the clip, actually, in that clip that's been circulating, I acknowledge that, well, I did take a day off from my show because I lost my voice. I literally couldn't speak. But even then, I still actually came in, and you can look this up on YouTube, and I delivered a message by subtitle and AI voice to the audience about the fact that I couldn't speak. But I couldn't do a whole show because I literally did not have a voice. But anyway, the core of it is that, yeah, obviously, if you're really sick, you can't go to work. But generally, like, you should go to work, even if you're not feeling totally great. You should still be to work, and that's it. I think that, I'm always kind of bemused, and as I'm watching the dog pile happen, to me, I'm always like, I'm pretty sure that most of these people understand, like, they're taking it more like they're intentionally taking it more literally than it was intended. And I think that most people are doing that on purpose. And so the whole thing is kind of, it's like a bad faith thing that thousands of people participate in, pretending that they think that I was being 1,000% literal. But that's part of the fun of Twitter. That's what we do on Twitter.
Well, I used to think that was the case, but now I think Trump might have broken people because they all take him literally. So now they have to take everyone else literally. Christy, do you have one?
Yeah, so let's talk about both the Amber Rose comment and also the Maj Touré kind of, back and forth.
I think I missed the Maj Touré. Oh, I'm out of the loop.
So when we're talking about those two things, I think sometimes you say things that we may be thinking, right? And they're controversial, but the way you say them is just very blunt and people take exception to them. Now, they probably wouldn't blow up if those of us on the right maybe wouldn't attack it if we didn't give it more oxygen, and then it just becomes a bigger thing. But I think the argument is you're not helping to build the party because you may be isolating potential, whether it's Black people or independents or whatever, or women. But you're also not a registered Republican. So is that also part of the thinking is I have a lot more freedom? Just, I always get on these guys because I'm the only one here that's a registered Republican and does work actually, for the party and actually to get people to be Republican. Do you have more freedom because that's not necessarily your goal?
Well, I am a Republican, but I'm not.
Oh,
But what I'll say is that I'm not an elected Republican. I'm not a politician, and so I'm not speaking as a politician. That's 100% correct. And so yeah, there is a weird thing that often, if I say something, even if it's something totally unrelated to politics, I'll get the well, you're not helping. You're not helping win an election. Well, I'm not. Not everything I say is with the goal of winning an election. I'm just a person with giving my view on things. So if I say that whatever, I don't think you should drink raw milk. I don't know if that was you guys can bring that one up too. But
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
yeah, it's like I didn't say that because I'm trying to win an election. I wasn't trying to affect the outcome of the election one way or another. It's just a view on that thing. And I also don't think I mean I would love to believe that I'm so powerful that I could just tweet something and affect the outcome of the election. I don't think that's actually true. The other point that I'll make is, yeah, I mean, I've gotten the lectures from people in the past that, well, you're not helping to reach a larger audience and all this kind of stuff. And the funny thing is, I usually get that lecture from people who are speaking to a much smaller audience than I am. Usually, these are people. It's like I think I know more about this than some of you. And I do, I've had some success actually in reaching large mainstream audiences. I'm doing it right now. I do understand. I guess what I'll say is, and there are plenty of people that have done a much better job of it than I do. But I just think it's funny when some political pundit, with a small platform, gives me that lecture. But and I'm not talking about you, by the way. I'm
offended, but go on.
Right. But the main point is that I do understand the value, actually, of we've been talking about in this conversation, the value of getting outside of the bubble and reaching a mass audience, but not, there are different ways of doing that, and not every single thing I say is with that intention. If I'll make a movie and it's like, okay, we're making a real play for a mass audience here in a deliberate way. If I put out a tweet, I'm not really thinking about an audience. It's just, that's how you use the platform.
Right.
And there might be times, Amber Rose thing is an example, where I'm actually specifically talking to Republicans. It's like a political thing. I'm not trying to, this is a message directly for conservatives in the political space. And so, it's like not everything you say is, has the same intent behind it in terms of the audience that you're trying to reach.
I would like to turn to my esteemed co-host, because at least every third or fourth episode, we have to air this out because it's so good. He makes the point of always saying that sometimes you just got to say some things that are true, one.
Right.
And the other thing, we've had several debates with several guests who talk about that very issue. Like, one, whose to say it's my job or that person's job to try to change everybody's mind, and everything they say needs to be cognizant about what it does for the GOP. And we go back to my point when Will was coming back, that none of us, no offense to you, man, none of us are really as famous as you all act like we are. It's not like, if Matt says do X, everybody in the hood is going to be like, I was just about to vote for Trump, but man, Walsh said this about Amber. I mean, it's silly, but that's the debates they have in the subset of Twitter, Wilfred Riley.
I mean, if you're just asking me what I think about that, yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. First of all, I think that people forget that the people on social media actually just are people. So, I mean, like, I agree with Christy that, like, if you were a GOP strategist, you could look at, like, Matt and Maj Touré arguing with each other and say, guys, what are you doing? But those are also just, I like both guys. Those are just two people. If they want to argue on Twitter, I don't really see, there's not really an authority other than Elon Musk that can stop that. So I'm sure I say a bunch of stuff on Twitter that my college or like consulting clients would prefer I don't say. In fact, I know that. It's just I don't really know if I'm gonna regulate that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's correct, Charles. I don't know how much that influences behavior. My own suspicion would be that, like, I mean, you see Trump's throwing a rap concert right now with Fabio Foreign, 42 Doug, Jack Boy and a bunch of other people. And I mean, my assumption would be that they're probably, yeah, it is funny. But my assumption would be that there probably are deals made behind the scenes. Like each of those artists is getting paid 20,000 or more. I know Jack Boy is, just you can ask. And you know, that's probably not going to fall apart because people criticize that. I mean, I myself, I didn't actually know this was going to be a topic until you guys started talking about it, but I wrote down some of Matt's Twitter greatest hits. Mermaids wouldn't be black because the deep ocean is, I think this is true actually, is so pressurized and dark that they'd have to be almost translucent.
Translucent.
This would be monsters, by the way. I mean, they'd have to have long fangs to hunt. I mean, nothing down there eats vegetables. Like, anyway, anime is satanic. The one that I'd be interested in asking about was the dispute with J.K. Rowling about transgenderism, because I'm not sure whether I agree or disagree on this. Well, Matt and a couple of other people, including some good friends of mine, have argued that feminism might not be the thing that stops the trans movement, that J.K. Rowling and quote unquote TERFs have done kind of good work, but aren't really going to be able to bring this to an end. And I guess my question for Matt would be, if we're talking about Twitter, why do you think that? I'm curious about it.
Yeah, and that's and I think I mean we went back and forth maybe a year or yeah, I guess about a year ago now. And that's, by the way, and I've said this many times, I like greatly respect the work that J.K. Rowling has done on this issue. And she's put a lot on the line, and she's sacrificed a lot. I mean, she's still a billionaire. Yeah, you could always say that, but even so, I mean, it still takes guts, even just the kind of reputational hit that she's taken. Even when you're a billionaire, you still care about your name and your reputation. Maybe even more, you care about it when you're a billionaire, I guess. And so she's been willing to take the hit there, and I really respect that. But I think where the genesis of that is that she kind of came out and sort of disavowed me and accused me of being a sexist and all this kind of stuff, which, because she was being accused of she had maybe said one good thing about my movie, the last movie, What is a Woman? And so she felt she had to come out and say, oh, no, I don't like that guy. That guy's terrible. And it's like, I get it. I mean, I understand I'm a bit of a toxic figure in certain circles. And so she felt she had to do that. But because she did, it's like, okay, well, now we're going to have a conversation about this. And then I made the point about feminism, which is simply that, feminists can be good advocates for basic sanity when it comes to the fight against transgenderism. I don't think nearly enough of them have been. I think many of them have gone along with it. But the ones that have spoken out is fantastic. But the problem is that feminism itself, like, they kind of are growing from the same root. Gender ideology, feminism is an offshoot of gender ideology. These are not even separate things. And what was the movement that was the first to come out and say that, well, really, men and women are the same. They're exactly equal. They are, who are the people that first took great exception to the idea that men and women's brains are different, that there are inherent differences in the sexes? It was the feminists. The feminists are the ones who said that. They were beating that drum long before the trans activists were certainly getting any attention. And all that means is that if you want to stay true, in my view, if you want to stay true to like feminist doctrine, you're always going to be ultimately limited in your ability to speak out against or to fight against trans ideology. And it's interesting because the feminists will try to flip this around, and they'll say to someone like me, as they have, and even as J.K. Rowling, I think, has, they'll say that actually I'm the one who's handicapped in my ability to fight against trans ideology because my ideology is very similar to theirs, they'll argue, which is absurd. My worldview could not be more diametrically opposed in every way to the trans activists. But there's a reason why, with exception, the trans activists and the feminists generally are on the same side. And even J.K. Rowling agrees with the trans activists on almost everything except for this. And when you see that, you should start asking yourself, like, okay, well, we're at a minimum, we're kind of ideological cousins here. I would say that they're more brothers and sisters, or sisters, I guess, as the trans activists would like to claim. But at a minimum,
Trans
they're
siblings.
in this, you know, right? They're on the same family tree, which is why they agree on everything else. It's not a coincidence that you take a trans activist, I disagree with them on the trans stuff. It's also pretty much guaranteed that I disagree with them on every other conceivable issue. And that is because my ideology is rooted, it's an entirely different root system here, which is not the case for J.K. Rowling.
Well, I got one last thing I want to ask you about, and then I think Chrissy has something she wants to say. But it's always interesting which things they're going to get upset about. I mean, if they hate you, they get upset about everything, but which thing is going to have legs? The one that actually got my attention and made me laugh was your dating advice for the ladies about how they can discern whether the guy is worth spending time on. And it was just ask them this one question. What era of history do they like the most? I was surprised at how many people got upset about that. But I can also see how they would be confused by that. What I assume it was having an interest in history in general and a knowledge of it rather than, a specific era and being like, having the basement dedicated to certain kind of things and playing out war history. Because, otherwise people would be like, so you want them to be an elitist and have a degree in all this. So what did you mean by that being a measuring stick for women in dating?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I mean, I remember that, but I'm trying to remember where that came from. I think that was it was a pre-existing conversation on Twitter about how can you in the dating world kind of, for lack of a better term, like figure out the IQ, the general IQ of the person you're dating early on, so that you don't end up dating a moron, frankly. And there were people who had different ideas that basically boiled down to giving your date like a pop quiz,
right?
Or busting out an IQ test for them to take, while you're sitting there at dinner. And I think you don't need to do that. That's probably not a great way to get to know somebody. So my point was, at least for women, when it comes to men, if you want to get an idea of just the general intelligence of the man that you're dating, the truth is that you could probably tell just by talking to them for 30 minutes or an hour. So through the course of a conversation, you should be able to get a pretty good read on their intelligence. But if you need a quick way to do it, if you need a trick to up your sleeve, then yeah, you could ask them, what's a historical period and era of history that you're interested in. And my point there is, yeah, it's not like every man has to know all these facts about World War II or the Civil War or anything like that, but a man should have intellectual curiosity and should have an interest in. That's the point. It's like it's not just that he has the knowledge and he can pass a quiz, but just does he have the interest? Does he have the curiosity about something? Is there like some fact about history that really grabs him and he's just interested? That's all I've actually lowered the bar. All I'm saying is find a man that has the interest in it. He's interested. Right. And if he has no interest in any of that kind of stuff, is not even curious about it, then, I think that does show a kind of, maybe it's not even a lack of intelligence, but it's actually worse than that. It's a lack of, I've already said it, but a lack of intellectual curiosity, which probably tells you other things about the guy that are not very appealing.
Right. So it seems to me like that is a great one to end in, because it's a matter of the one thing you don't get on social media, and that's nuance and context. So had people known about the other, they probably would have been less upset. Chrissy, you have something to say to Matt?
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you for making these genre of films. I mean, as a mom, it's so hard raising kids in this society. And I think these really speak to the kids, just showing them how ridiculous a lot of this stuff is, whether it's what is a woman, or this one now. I know my kids were raised mostly in super liberal Redondo Beach. And so California, and when we came out here to Arizona, it's really tough raising high school kids and them not being affected in some way or another. And your film really cut through the chase as far as what is a woman. And mom didn't have to do a lot of preaching about the whole, alphabet soup, side of things. I mean, they really just kind of got it, honestly, from, watching your film, and just the light bulb came on how
I
ridiculous
thought you
a
were
lot
going
of
to
it was.
apologize to Matt.
No.
Well, no apology needed. No, I appreciate you guys bringing me on to have the conversation, and you know, all the things I talk about on Twitter. At least these are things that these are topics that I found interesting. So I always like talking about them. But I love hearing that when I hear from parents that the films in any way were helpful to them, and in, you know, dealing with these topics with their kids. Like, as a parent myself, obviously with 6 kids, that's the kind of feedback I like to hear the most. So I appreciate that.
Did you find out if you were a racist?
Well, yeah, I found out pretty early. I don't give spoilers away, but you know, that's the thing. You find out in the first. It's very different from What Is a Woman, because What Is a Woman, I never got an answer,
Right.
or at least not till the end. But am I racist? I got the answer right away. I was
Yes.
told, yes, I am a racist, because I'm a white guy, so I'm automatically racist.
And you
at
always
least
will be.
And I always will be, and that's all there is to it, according to them anyway.
Well, I appreciate your time. We will let you go, but hopefully this is not the end. We'll see a lot more from you, and people will go see this film and whatever you got coming up next. He is Matt Walsh, host of The Matt Walsh Show and star of Am I Racist? The answer is yes. Matt, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Land of the free and a home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to save, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving a day.